I burst through the front door after another long day at school, tired but expecting a quiet evening. Instead, Mark's booming voice hit me like a slap. "The kids are mine, Anna. I'll prove you're unstable. Court will side with me." My heart froze. Lily and Jack clung to each other on the couch, eyes wide and scared. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just an argument. This was war. I forced a steady breath, pushing down the fury that threatened to spill. How could he threaten our children like this? He spun, eyes blazing like he owned the house, the kids, my life. I knelt beside them, pulling them into a hug. "Daddy's just upset," I whispered, keeping my voice calm. Inside, I burned with rage. This man I had loved for 10 years, the father of my children, was now my enemy. He stormed out, slamming the door. I stayed crouched with the kids, trying to absorb the shock, and wondered, what secrets did he hide that I could use? How far would he go? And most importantly, how could I protect the children while staying one step ahead? I stayed with Lily and Jack long after Mark left, tracing their little hands in mine, trying to make sense of his outburst. My mind raced. How could someone I shared a life with suddenly turn into such a threat? I whispered promises to them. Quiet, soft words they could hold on to while the storm passed. Once they slept, I replayed every word he said, every glance, every threat. I couldn't let this go. My husband's smirk haunted me, the way he seemed to think he had already won. But I wouldn't explode in front of the children. I needed a plan. I sat at the kitchen table, notebook open, sketching every scenario, every piece of leverage I might uncover. Emails, texts, moments he thought I hadn't noticed. They could all matter. My hands shook slightly, but my resolve hardened. If he wanted a fight, I'd meet him with strategy. I vowed to myself that I would not be the woman cowering in her own home. Not today. Not ever. And most importantly, I would protect Lily and Jack from the chaos he tried to create. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, silent tears tracing my cheeks. The words kept circling in my mind. My husband threatened to take the children, until I walked into court with the custody papers he ignored. That was the story I would tell someday. My name is Anna Thompson, a regular mom from Ohio, white, mid-30s, teaching second grade by day and holding my family together by night. But that threat changed everything. I realized that survival wasn't about shouting or crying. It was about quiet, careful moves. My heart ached, not just from his betrayal but from the fear of losing the kids. I imagined the courtroom, the papers, the evidence, all of it ignored until now. And I promised myself I wouldn't let him gaslight me into helplessness. If I had to fight in silence for weeks, months even, I would gather proof, witnesses, and support, and when the time came, I would confront him legally and calmly. I would not falter. This wasn't just a threat to my family. It was a challenge I would meet head-on. The first step was knowledge. The first step was planning. The next morning, Mark acted like nothing had happened, kissing my cheek with a fake smile. "We good?" he asked, eyes sharp, daring me to react. I smiled back, gripping my coffee mug tight, forcing calm into my voice. Inside I burned. He thought I was weak, that I could be intimidated with his posturing. But as he left for work, I pulled out my phone and searched for divorce lawyers in our city, reading reviews, checking ratings, jotting down notes. Every email, every text, every documented incident mattered now. The kids laughed at breakfast, unaware of the tension buzzing through the house. I let it slide over them like sunlight, hiding my plotting behind small smiles and gentle words. I was learning a new rhythm. Appear calm, gather evidence, move strategically. Step 1, knowledge. Step 2, document everything. I wanted Mark to think I was compliant while quietly building a case he could never ignore. By the time he realized I was serious, it would be too late. And for the first time I felt a flicker of hope. Hope that justice, not anger, could protect my family. That afternoon, I secretly met with Ms. Harper, a sharp divorce lawyer highly recommended online. I laid out everything. Mark's threats, late-night yelling, the manipulative behavior, and my concerns for the children. She leaned in, eyes focused, asking questions that cut straight to the truth. "We need proof, Anna," she said firmly. "Emails, texts, recordings. Anything that shows patterns." My heart raced. I had some evidence but not enough. As I left her office, a text from Mark popped up. "Pick up the kids or else." My fingers tightened on the phone. Or else what? Every word now mattered, every action had to be calculated. That evening, Mark ranted at dinner, calling me lazy, while the children ate quietly. I slipped my phone under the table, recording him. He had no idea. Every sneer, every insult, every threat was now on tape. I smiled through it, hiding triumph behind polite nods. The evidence was mounting. Every day, every tiny oversight, every careless threat he made would be my ammunition. The court might have ignored him before, but this time I would be ready. That evening, Mark ranted again while I prepared dinner, oblivious to the quiet recording running on my phone. "You're a mess, Anna. No judge will give you custody," he sneered, pacing the kitchen like a man who owned everything. The kids ate silently, tense, their eyes darting between us. I smiled calmly, nodding politely, but inside triumph sparked. Every harsh word, every arrogant sneer was now documented. I kept my voice gentle, answering Lily's questions with soft lies, keeping them calm while I strategized. After dinner, I packed lunches for the next day, pretending nothing had happened. My mind, however, raced with possibilities. Could this tape be enough? Should I dig deeper? I decided I needed more proof, emails, messages, anything that showed his patterns of manipulation. I resolved to stay quiet, patient, and observant. Mark thought he was winning, but each careless word, each moment of arrogance, was now feeding the arsenal I was quietly building. The children's safety and my chance at justice depended on strategy, patience, and timing. And I would not fail. Not now. Not ever. Late that night, I searched through old emails, my hands trembling. Hidden among work-related messages were flirtatious ones to a coworker, dating back months. My chest tightened as betrayal cut deep. How long had this been going on? Each screenshot I saved was a dagger, proof of deceit I could use. I paced our bedroom, careful not to wake Mark, who slept soundly beside me, unaware of the evidence I had uncovered. My thoughts shifted. Timing was everything. If I acted too soon, he might catch on. If I waited too long, he might cover his tracks. I felt a mix of fury, sadness, and resolve. This evidence was gold, but it was also dangerous. I would need witnesses, documentation, and strategy to make it count. Slowly, a plan began forming in my mind. Step by step, methodical and patient. I whispered promises to myself. I will protect the kids. I will prove the truth. I will not be silenced. Exhausted, I finally slept, the files safely stored on my laptop, the first real spark of hope in weeks. Weeks passed as I maintained a careful balance, smiling through school drop-offs, packing lunches, attending parent meetings, all while building my hidden case. Mark dropped a bomb one morning over breakfast. "I'm filing for divorce first." "You'll get nothing," he said smugly, as if he'd trapped me. I nodded calmly, sipping my coffee, masking the storm inside. My mind raced. Accelerate the plan, gather more evidence, line up witnesses. After he left for work, I called Ms. Harper, who reminded me of what we still needed: documented patterns, witness accounts, and supporting evidence. My pulse quickened with determination. Each day, I monitored Mark, recorded conversations, and quietly collected proof of his indiscretions and negligence. At night, I reviewed every email, text, and recording, cataloging them carefully. Every detail mattered. I knew the battle would be long, tense, and emotionally draining, but I felt a quiet power in preparation. Each day of patience made me stronger. Each unnoticed moment of his arrogance added to my arsenal. I was no longer just surviving. I was planning my victory with precision, making sure every move would count when the day of truth arrived. One afternoon, I thought of our neighbor, Mrs. Ellis, who had witnessed Mark's outbursts before. Heart pounding, I knocked on her door, explaining my situation calmly. "I need your help," I said. She nodded, sharing what she had seen: angry confrontations, yelling, and threats toward the children. Each story she told strengthened my case, giving me tangible evidence that could not be ignored. That evening, Mark came home reeking of perfume, claiming a business dinner. I said nothing, noting the time and details in my journal. The kids sensed tension, asking innocent questions, and I answered with gentle reassurances. Inside, my resolve hardened. I was collecting proof, allies, and clarity, each step bringing me closer to justice. But danger lurked. Each new piece of evidence risked exposure. Each action had to be timed perfectly. I felt a mix of fear and determination. Fear of retaliation, but determination to protect my children. The quiet planning, the careful recording, the strategic witness recruitment. It all mattered. I was building a case Mark could never dismiss, and for the first time, I felt a sense of control amidst the chaos he had created. I decided to hire a private investigator discreetly, using savings I had hidden. Days later, photos arrived. Mark with another woman, laughing in a hotel, utterly unaware that every step had been documented. My stomach churned as pain and anger mingled, but Ms. Harper reassured me over the phone. This seals it. Evidence of infidelity, lies, and neglect was now undeniable. But timing remained critical. One misstep could ruin everything. I carefully organized the photos, emails, and recordings, planning how and when each piece would be introduced in court. At the same time, I maintained normalcy for the kids, masking my plotting behind gentle routines. The home felt tense but calm, a fragile balance between daily life and strategic preparation. Each day, each careful move, each piece of evidence brought me closer to my goal, securing safety and justice for my children. Mark remained oblivious, arrogant, and overconfident, which only strengthened my position. I whispered promises to myself, to Lily, to Jack, that they would never be pawns in his game again. The next chapter of our lives was being written silently, carefully, and deliberately, and I was ready for the storm. I waited anxiously for the private investigator's full report. When it arrived, my hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Photos of Mark with another woman, laughing in a hotel, stared back at me. My stomach churned, a mix of pain and rage. Ms. Harper called shortly after. This seals it, she said firmly. Evidence of infidelity, negligence, and deception was undeniable. I felt a spark of hope and triumph, but timing remained critical. Revealing it too soon could make Mark suspicious. Too late, and it might not be admissible. Carefully I catalogued every photo, every screenshot, every recording. At night, while the children slept, I reviewed the files again, strategizing how to use them effectively. Mark remained unaware, arrogant as ever, assuming he controlled the situation. I maintained normal routines, making sure Lily and Jack felt safe, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Every conversation, every movement was calculated. The power shifted quietly, but unmistakably. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had an upper hand. Justice wasn't a dream, it was becoming a plan. The countdown to court was on, and I had to stay patient, focused, and ready for any twist Mark might throw at us. At a family barbecue, Mark played the perfect dad, smiling and laughing while I watched cautiously. He leaned close, whispering in my ear, "Give up now or it'll get ugly." His hand gripped my arm too tightly, leaving a faint bruise. I forced a laugh, hiding the hurt, careful not to alarm the children or guests. Inside, fury and determination boiled. Every threat, every arrogant move, was adding fuel to the plan I had carefully constructed. Later, a call from his lawyer arrived, demands for full custody and accusations labeling me unfit. I read the words alone in the quiet of the living room, fists clenched. Arrogance dripped from every line. Ms. Harper reassured me. They had ignored our requests for counter-evidence. This was an opening I couldn't waste. I began mapping out the next steps, organizing witness statements, proof of infidelity, recordings of threats, and documentation of Mark's neglect. The barbecue had been a performance, The courtroom would be the real stage. I reminded myself to stay calm, collected, and strategic. Every move now counted. One misstep could ruin months of preparation. But I was determined. My children's safety and my victory would not be compromised. I gathered financial records next, scanning for hidden accounts or evidence of deception. Shock hit as I discovered funds siphoned away, likely to cover his affairs. The betrayal stung, but I stayed calm, organizing the records for Ms. Harper. The kids' laughter from the yard grounded me, reminding me of why I fought. Then, unexpectedly, his mistress appeared at our door, visibly pregnant and demanding to see Mark. My world spun, another complication in the already tense situation. I calmly closed the door, hiding my fury. Mark later denied it, sweating as he lied. This revelation became another weapon in my arsenal. Timing would be everything. I needed to use it strategically without tipping him off. Every new piece of evidence strengthened my case, but also increased the risk. I reminded myself to stay patient, careful, and observant. Planning the next moves, I coordinated with Ms. Harper, ensuring that each document, witness, and piece of proof would align perfectly in court. The storm of deception surrounding Mark was becoming clear, and while the revelation of his mistress shocked me, it fueled a deeper resolve. My children's safety and justice were non-negotiable, and I would see it through. Ms. Harper filed motions including the custody papers Mark had ignored months ago. He never signed off on reviewing them, she explained, excitement in her voice. My pulse quickened. Court dates were set, and Mark's reaction that evening confirmed his arrogance. He exploded, shattering a vase, shouting threats. I remained composed, documenting every detail carefully. Friends started noticing changes. One confided that Mark boasted about winning easily. I smiled outwardly, hiding the strategic calculations running through my mind. At home, the children asked questions, and I answered with gentle honesty, keeping them safe. Emotionally, while preparing for legal confrontation, each piece of evidence, each recorded threat, each witness account was now part of a carefully woven case. Mark's arrogance was his downfall, and I quietly capitalized on it. As the trial approached, I felt a mixture of fear, anticipation, and resolve. The battle was almost tangible, tension thick in the air, yet I stayed calm, methodical, and prepared. Every detail mattered. Every move was calculated. I reminded myself that patience was power, timing was everything, and my children's future depended on seeing this through to the end. Just when I thought preparation was complete, Mark's lawyer ambushed us with false claims, calling me depressed and unfit, fabricating texts as proof. Panic surged for a moment, but Ms. Harper responded quickly, confident and strategic. Their arrogance blinds them, she said, reassuring me. I regrouped, reviewing every piece of evidence meticulously, reinforcing our position. Then, a key witness threatened to back out, likely due to intimidation. I confronted her privately, gently insisting she record her account. She trembled but agreed, providing a new, critical piece of evidence. I filed it immediately, knowing it would strengthen our case. Mark's reaction escalated. He packed bags, sneering, "I'm moving out with the kids soon." Heartbreaking, yet I remained composed. I explained to Lily and Jack gently, "Daddy needs space." Tears flowed, but they were calm, safe in my embrace. Behind the scenes, I reviewed every document, recording, and photo again, preparing for court. Each setback became an opportunity to strategize. Each challenge reinforced my patience and planning. The storm of deceit, threats, and lies was intensifying, but my resolve was unwavering. I was ready for the courtroom battle, knowing that justice, careful preparation, and timing were finally aligning in my favor. The night before court, Mark's rage escalated. He paced the house, muttering under his breath, knocking over a chair in frustration. I stayed calm, hiding my nerves behind a mask of normalcy, while packing the last documents and evidence in my briefcase. Every motion, every email, every photo was meticulously labeled. I reminded myself, patience and timing would be my greatest weapons. I double-checked that all recordings were clear, all witnesses confirmed, and that Ms. Harper had everything ready. Mark, oblivious, boasted about winning to friends, unaware that each of his threats and lies had been documented. My children sensed tension, but I answered their questions gently, keeping them calm. That night, as I tucked Lily and Jack into bed, I whispered, "Mommy's got this," promising safety, stability, and justice. I knew court tomorrow would test every ounce of patience, courage, and planning I had. Sleep came fitfully, but my resolve never wavered. I felt like a soldier ready for battle, armed with truth, evidence, and strategy. Every threat Mark had made, every lie, and every deception would now face the light of justice. I drifted off with one thought. Tomorrow the fight would no longer be hidden. It would unfold openly, and I would be ready. Early morning sunlight crept into my bedroom, a calm before the storm. I dressed carefully, choosing clothes that projected confidence and composure. Breakfast was quiet. The kids sensed my seriousness but smiled at small gestures. Ms. Harper called to review last-minute strategy points. "Stay calm, stick to the facts, and let the evidence speak," she reminded me. I nodded, heart racing but focused. When we arrived at the courthouse, Mark's smug grin greeted me across the hall. His lawyer whispered over his shoulder, underestimating the weight of our preparation. I carried my files tightly, every folder a shield and a weapon. Witnesses arrived, and I introduced myself calmly, shaking hands, projecting assurance. Every glance, every whispered conversation, I documented mentally. I reminded myself, focus on clarity, truth, and composure. Courtroom doors opened, and the judge called the session to order. Mark's side presented first, arrogance and bluster dripping from their statements. I listened, recording every word mentally, waiting for my turn. My pulse raced, but I remained poised. This was the moment where planning, patience, and courage intersected. My children's future depended on what happened next. Every detail mattered. Every truth counted. And the first real shock for Mark was yet to come. When it was my turn, I stood and introduced myself calmly, locking eyes with the judge. Every word I spoke was deliberate, clear, and precise. I presented the custody papers Mark had ignored, the emails proving infidelity, the recordings of threats, and photos from the private investigator. The courtroom felt tense, like the air itself held its breath. Mark squirmed, his arrogance cracking as evidence unfolded. Witness after witness recounted his neglect, threats, and lies, some reluctant but ultimately compelled to tell the truth. Each statement landed like a hammer, eroding the facade he had carefully maintained for years. Ms. Harper guided me with subtle cues, ensuring clarity and impact. Every detail mattered, times, dates, behaviors. Mark attempted to interrupt, to cast doubt, but the evidence was overwhelming. I remained composed, answering questions truthfully, calmly, and with controlled emotion. The children's safety, their well-being, and their future were now fully visible to the court. I felt the tide turning, the momentum shifting. Every prepared detail, every patient action over weeks and months, was finally achieving its purpose. The room hung on my words, every lie Mark had told now exposed. The victory I had meticulously worked toward was almost within reach. Mark's reaction was immediate and furious. He tried to dismiss witnesses, claim evidence was fabricated, and paint me as unstable. But each attempt only revealed more of his arrogance and deception. I observed quietly, knowing that his overconfidence was his undoing. Ms. Harper countered every claim with documentation, recordings, and carefully preserved evidence. The judge asked pointed questions, exposing contradictions and forcing Mark to admit truths he had tried to hide. My chest tightened with both anxiety and anticipation. Each revelation felt like a blow to his ego, a correction of the years of manipulation and threats. The children sat nearby, unaware of the full gravity, yet safe in my presence. As the final witness spoke against him, I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. Months of careful documentation, planning, and courage were culminating. Mark's empire of lies and control was unraveling, and the court had become the stage where truth triumphed over deceit. I remained poised, letting the evidence, the witnesses, and the judge's scrutiny work for me. The final moments before the ruling were tense, the air thick with anticipation. Justice was near, and the long-fought battle for my children's safety was almost won. The judge's gavel echoed, cutting through the tense silence. "Custody to the mother," she declared firmly. Relief, triumph, and a wave of emotion hit me simultaneously. Mark slumped, defeated. His smugness evaporated. The children ran into my arms, tears of relief streaming down all our faces. Months of preparation, patience, and strategic action had paid off. The house, savings, and his reputation were casualties of his own arrogance. I hugged Lily and Jack tightly, savoring the quiet victory that had been fought with careful planning, courage, and unwavering focus. Outside the courthouse, the sun shone warmly, a silent testament to justice served. I reflected on the long journey. Every recording, every email, every witness had mattered. I hadn't sought revenge. I had sought truth and protection. Mark's downfall was complete, but my focus remained on the children, their future, and rebuilding a life of stability and love. I knew the path ahead required patience, but the hardest battle had been won. Strength, planning, and courage had carried us through. As we walked away together, I felt empowered, knowing that no threat, no lie, and no manipulation could ever take what truly belonged to us: our family, our safety, and our peace of mind. The eve before the final hearing, I received an anonymous call. The voice on the other end offered crucial support. Mark's mistress had agreed to testify via affidavit. She detailed lies, threats, and his repeated betrayals. My pulse raced. This was unexpected but golden. I coordinated with Ms. Harper, ensuring her words were admissible without exposing my identity prematurely. That night, I double-checked all documents, recordings, and witness statements, mentally rehearsing how each piece would fall into place. The kids were asleep, their soft breaths a reminder of what I was fighting for. I sat quietly, heart pounding, imagining Mark's shock when the truth emerged. This affidavit would dismantle his last defenses, exposing deception that had gone unchecked for years. As I drifted into restless sleep, I felt both fear and exhilaration. The court would see the full picture now. The man who had threatened, lied, and manipulated. The affidavit was the tipping point, a final surprise weapon in a long, tense battle. I whispered to myself, "Tomorrow, everything changes." My courage, planning, and patience had brought us to this critical moment. I was ready to face him, the courtroom, and the truth, knowing that justice for my children was finally within reach. Court day dawned, sunlight slicing through tall windows as I entered with my files firmly in hand. Mark's confident grin faltered as he caught my composed expression. The courtroom was tense. Every eye seemed to follow me. The judge called the session to order. Mark's side began with bluster, attempting to minimize his actions, but the affidavit and all evidence I'd gathered hung in the air like unshakable anchors. When my turn came, I spoke clearly, calmly, recounting the timeline, presenting recordings, emails, and photos. Ms. Harper guided me subtly, helping me stay concise and persuasive. As the affidavit was read aloud, Mark's face paled, every lie and misdeed exposed. The judge's questions pinpointed contradictions, forcing him to admit truths he'd tried to hide. Witnesses corroborated incidents, painting a full picture of neglect, manipulation, and deceit. Each piece of evidence landed, systematically dismantling his arrogance. I kept my composure, letting the facts speak, every calculated move from the past weeks now proving its worth. My children's well-being was the central focus, and the courtroom understood that clearly. Mark's empire of lies, carefully built over years, was crumbling, and I remained the steady force guiding justice to its rightful conclusion. Mark tried last-ditch attacks, claiming fabrications, questioning witnesses, and twisting truths. But each attempt only revealed his desperation and arrogance. The judge, focused and unswayed, demanded clarity and proof, exposing his contradictions. I presented the custody papers he had ignored months ago, documents outlining his absences, threats, and neglect. The courtroom grew tense as each fact landed like a strike, exposing him fully. Witnesses confirmed the abuse and instability, while emails and recordings validated every claim. I watched Mark squirm, his confidence evaporating, replaced by panic and disbelief. Each new revelation tightened the noose around him. Ms. Harper guided me, ensuring my testimony remained factual, composed, and persuasive. The affidavit from the mistress was the final blow, proof that he had lied repeatedly, deceived everyone, and acted against our children's best interest. I felt a wave of relief, knowing the truth had finally shattered his carefully maintained facade. Every late night, every careful recording, every patient step had led to this critical moment. I glanced at Lily and Jack, their eyes bright with trust and hope. The tide had turned irrevocably, and the victory I had meticulously worked toward was about to be confirmed. Justice, patience, and truth had aligned. The gavel hit. Custody awarded to the mother, the judge pronounced firmly. Relief, triumph, and overwhelming emotion crashed over me. Mark slumped, stunned. His house of lies collapsed in an instant. The children ran to my arms, tears of joy streaming down all our faces. Months of planning, patience, and careful documentation had culminated in this moment. Every recording, email, and witness statement mattered. The court had seen the full truth, and justice had prevailed. Outside, sunlight warmed us, a symbol of the long-awaited peace. Mark's arrogance, threats, and lies had backfired completely. I didn't seek revenge. I sought protection, safety, and stability for my children. We walked from the courthouse together, the weight of months lifted, replaced by hope, freedom, and a renewed sense of control. Life ahead felt lighter, brighter, and full of potential. The hardest battle had been fought and won, proving that patience, courage, and strategic action could overcome deceit and manipulation. Months later, life bloomed with new energy. We moved to a bright home, the children thriving, laughter filling every corner. I advanced in my career, balancing work and family with renewed strength. Mark. He vanished from our lives, isolated and burdened with the consequences of his own arrogance. No petty revenge, just the quiet power of truth prevailing. I reflected often on the journey, documenting every lie, planning each step, and maintaining composure had saved my family. I shared this story not for fame, but as a testament to resilience, courage, and the strength of a mother determined to protect her children. Life, I realized, was too short for toxic ties. I had rebuilt, stronger and wiser, teaching Lily and Jack the value of integrity, patience, and courage. Our bond grew, unbreakable, forged in adversity. Each day brought calm, joy, and purpose. I walked confidently into the future, armed with lessons learned and a heart full of hope. Justice had been served, peace restored, and my family thrived. Proof that with patience, strategy, and truth, even the darkest threats could be overcome.